Your Excellencies, mevrouw de voorzitter, dear colleagues, vice rectors, dear colleagues and alumni, distinguished guests, dear students. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all here in our promotion hall and also all attendees online to this Ambassador's Lecture. Actually, the third in the current academic year. In the fall, we already welcomed UK Ambassador Martin Shearman following the Association of the United Kingdom to Horizon Europe. And later on, OECD Secretary General Matthias Cormann was here with an inspiring speech on the role of education in society. Today, we are undoubtedly in for another very interesting evening of dialogue with His Excellency Fu Cong, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to the European Union, who will talk about the academic interactions between the European Union and China. As most of you probably know, KU Leuven has been working with a select number of top research-intensive universities in China for a long time and more intensively for the last 20 years or so. And that, in the same period, we have seen an increase of the number and the quality of Chinese students at KU Leuven. This has grown significantly. This increase of Chinese students is following the trend that we have seen for international students more generally. To just quote one number, we count almost a doubling of the number of incoming degree-seeking students international since 2017. And in the same period, we also have seen a significant increase of international doctoral students. This internationalization of universities is happening in an era where the world is changing rapidly, some say. In this period, China has developed into a country with increasing global influence and impact. This is not in the least the case in terms of the very high quality of its academic institutions and the research performed, also linking basic research with societal impact and applications, the importance of which cannot be underestimated in the worldwide efforts to find solutions to major global challenges that we are facing all together. We are living a time in which a better understanding of each other's culture, values, languages, views and intentions is more crucial than ever. Recent evolutions in the global geopolitical situation have made for an ever more complex and challenging context in which we, as a leading European and globally oriented research university, are trying to find a workable playing field for academic collaboration, both in research and in education. Intense but sensible cooperation with the top research institutions worldwide, not only but also with China, is vitally important for us as a knowledge institution. How to achieve this in a way that is compatible with our core values and world views as a European research university keeps us busy. We are therefore intrigued by the possibility of hosting Ambassador Fu Cong at the Chinese mission to the EU to come and share with us the views of China on how mobility and higher education and knowledge exchange through culture exchange and youth could play a positive role in this. This idea to rekindle this effort stems from the visit that the European Union leadership paid to President Xi in Beijing in December of 2023. They together decided to restart the so-called high-level people-to-people dialogue that was put on hold during the COVID pandemic. This restart is intended for later this spring, and the open conversation we are having tonight, we are very much looking forward to this open conversation, is meant to contribute to the preparations of this revamped dialogue. After the anticipated keynote address by Mr. Ambassador, we will pass the floor to Professor Roel Leus. He is the chair of the KU Leuven Advisory Committee on the Chinese region, who will moderate a conversation with the members of a panel on a number of related issues. There will be a short statement on our institutional approach, as well as short testimonials of professors with personal expertise in working on and collaborating with China and Chinese universities. As always in this Ambassador's Lecture format, you, as appreciated audience, only the people being present here in the live audience, will have the last word in an open Q&A session. But first, it is my honor to introduce His Excellency Fu Cong, Ambassador of the PRC to the EU, as our keynote speaker of tonight. Ambassador Fu was appointed as Ambassador to the EU in December 2022, after a long and distinguished career as a mostly multilateral-oriented diplomat with a focus on international organizations and disarmament. At different times in his career, he found himself appointed in different capacities to the United Nations institutions in Geneva and Vienna, intertwined with responsibilities for multilateral relations and disarmament at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing. Ambassador Fu has been trained as a jurist. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Levin, for the kind introduction. Honorable President Tyson, Honorable Rector, Honorable Vice Rector, Professor Levens, distinguished professors, young academics. Thank you for inviting me to KU Leuven. It is always a great pleasure to speak in front of so many young faces. Before the lecture, Professor Levens and other professors kindly showed me around the university hall and gave me a brief introduction of the KU Leuven. I have to say that I was deeply impressed by the grandiose building and the long history of the university. And it also brought back fond memories of my campus life. You are on the campus of one of the most prestigious universities in Europe, and indeed in the whole world. Over the extraordinary course of 6 centuries of endeavor, the university has hosted world-renowned scholars, promoted humanistic studies, and development of natural science in Europe. And I was told just now that there is a long history of a connection between China and this university, and I was very proud. And it has this university has suffered wars. I was told that the building was totally burned down during the 2 world wars, and that shows the disaster that a war can bring to the people's life and to a world-renowned university like this. And it has suffered closures and countless political turmoils. But the academic pursuit in the spirit of KU Leuven has never failed to exist, which helped to shape minds and make an impact on the world. Next year, KU Leuven will celebrate its 600th anniversary. Please allow me to say happy birthday to all of you in advance, and wish you another century of excellence and inspiration. Let me say a few words about the education in China. And education in China has also had a long history. If you think of the Chinese history, it can be traced back to the Western Zhou dynasty of more than 2,000 years ago, when schools for noblemen and the commoners were established nationwide. But the first university in modern China was established until almost 5 centuries after KU Leuven was established. Beiyang University was founded in 1895 in East China's Tianjin city, which is my home city. And that university learned from the Western model and is widely regarded as the origin of modern Chinese higher education. Since its establishment, Beiyang University has held on to the belief that devotion to education makes the nation strong. It reflects the spirit of all Chinese universities, i.e., a strong sense of responsibility and a commitment to the nation. Looking back at the history of Chinese and European higher education, we could see universities, both in China and Europe, have always been at the forefront of sustaining civilization, creating knowledge, and serving the society. The spirit of humanism and the belief in peace have remained fresh through the smoke and the dust of history. Professor Levens told me that of the over 63,000 students in KU11, around 14,000 are international students. Many of them are from Asia. That is very good to know, because that makes KU11 truly international, truly inclusive, and multicultural. China has long emphasized the opening up of education. Since the first assignment of students abroad in the 19th century, opening our eyes to the outside world has been a fundamental tenet that has provided a source of motivation in Chinese path to modernization. With the introduction of the reform and opening up over 4 decades ago, China's higher education has accelerated its internationalization process in the midst of economic globalization. Today, China is the world's top source of international students. Around 1 million Chinese students are studying at higher educational institutes abroad. I myself and my colleague, Minister Councillor Ma Tao, who is also with us today, are both beneficiaries of this development. We both had the pleasure of studying abroad in our early years of public service. China has also become the world's second largest destination for international students. At present, the number of international students in China has reached a record high of more than 400,000. They came from 205 countries and regions. What has such massive mobility in higher education brought about? Well, knowledge innovation and knowledge flow are the obvious outcomes. Over the decades, many of the overseas students who studied in China are now builders of their countries in Asia, Africa, and indeed in the entire global South. In the case of China, about 80% of the students returned from their overseas studies between 1978 and 2019. Many of these returnees are playing important roles in China's modernization drive. Some of the students do choose to stay abroad, which is fine with us, as our policy guarantees their freedom of coming and going. I had the pleasure to meet with some of the Chinese scientists in Europe last year and find that many of them have become the backbones of their host countries. Students' mobility goes beyond talent and the knowledge exchange. It is a vehicle of cultural change, cultural exchange, and dialogue. I can give you an example. A French student by the name of Numa, who is doing a PhD at Huazhong University of Science and Technology in central China, once described his life in China as a cultural odyssey, and said that when he heard the familiar tunes of Dvorak, Symphony No. 9 from the New World at a local concert hall, he felt as if he had never left his hometown, although his hometown is actually thousands of miles away. There are many other international students and scholars who have the same or similar experiences. Professor Thomas Kuhlmann from the Department of Architecture of KU Leuven has traveled to China many times. According to one report, his work on architectural history and conservation brought him to many interesting places in the urban and the rural China, where his sketches of Asian buildings help him bridge the language barrier. To many Chinese students and friends, he is more than a professor of architecture. He is a messenger of culture. Looking back, China and Europe had enjoyed a long history of cultural exchanges and mutual learning. If you go to some of the leading museums in Europe, you will find that the 4 great inventions of ancient China contributed to the European Renaissance, and the elegant beauty of Chinese porcelain influenced the evolution of European art styles. On the other hand, the Italian missionary by the name of Matteo Ricci, the French missionary Johann Bouvet, and many others have introduced European knowledge in science and technology to China. One of KU Leuven's most well-known graduates in China was Mr. Ferdinand Verbiest. Last year, China and Belgium jointly commemorated the 400th anniversary of his birth. His studies at KU Leuven had laid a solid foundation for his later life in China as a cultural ambassador. He made significant contribution to the interaction and integration of Chinese and the European civilizations. The exchanges between our two civilizations have not only benefited our two sides, but also contributed to the promotion of global civilization and prosperity as a whole. For example, the Asian Silk Road was not only a trade route that went from China to Europe, but also transmitted cultural exchange, including theatrical performances, dance, music, and art. The Silk Road has also played a major role in the dissemination of religions. According to UNESCO, the Silk Road can thus be considered as an important fundament of human civilization. The distinguished German philosopher Leibniz published a book, Writings on China, in 1697. He said in this book, China and Europe represent the 2 peaks of the human culture. If China and the West strengthen cooperation and the cultural exchanges, a perfect and harmonious world can be achieved. In the year 2023, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Global Civilization Initiative, which emphasizes the inheritance and innovation of civilizations on the basis of recognizing, respecting, and promoting the common values of humanity. China will promote civilizations through diversity and through differences, thus building a global community of shared future through exchanges and cooperation. In this connection, it is indeed welcoming news that the 6th meeting of China-EU high-level people-to-people dialogue mechanism will be held soon. It will provide a good opportunity to enhance mutual interest and understanding between the two sides. Ladies and gentlemen, young academics, I would also like to take this opportunity to update you on China-EU relations. Last December, I was back in Beijing to receive the 2 presidents of EU, when the first face-to-face summit was held in Beijing since the pandemic. There were in-depth discussions and a broad agreement between the leaders of the two sides to enhance mutual understanding and trust, manage our differences appropriately and responsibly, and strengthen the stability and the reciprocity of the China-EU relations. I have a strong feeling that the overall China-EU relations is in a better shape today than the past few years. Differences still remain, and misperceptions still exist, but there is growing recognition that the healthy and stable China-EU relationship serves the interests of both sides. And the summit helped to set a new direction for the bilateral relationship. There is also stronger interest and commitment in strengthening dialogue and cooperation in key areas such as trade and investment, green development, digital economy, artificial intelligence, geographical indication, intellectual property, export control, and many other areas as well. A number of established mechanisms resumed function in the past few months. Before coming here, I just saw off Ambassador Li Hui, China's Special Envoy for Eurasian Affairs. This is his second visit to EU in the second round of his subtle diplomacy on the Ukrainian crisis, which will also take him to Russia, to Ukraine, Poland, Germany, and France. China stands ready to engage with all parties concerned, including the EU, on issues of global peace and security. I've always argued that as two major global forces, two major markets, and two major civilizations, there exists no geopolitical conflict or clash of fundamental interest between China and Europe. It is well proven that China and the EU are partners, not rivals. Between the two sides, there is more consensus than differences, more cooperation than competition. When it comes to promoting an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, China and the EU have common interests and shoulder common responsibilities. China looks forward to working with the EU to take real actions to cope with unprecedented risks and challenges. Young academics, youth is the most active and vital force of the society. More than 100 years ago, a famous Chinese scholar wrote that if the youth is strong, China is strong. So you are the future, and what you do today determines how your country will look like in the future. And the attitude of the youth on both sides will determine the future of China-EU relations. In the digital era, social media, online platforms, and the mobile payment have reshaped the life and the work of the younger generation in China. AI and VR, which is virtual reality, have become pioneers in the fields of learning and creating, and recreating as well. China's youth are willing to embrace the world and to pursue broader and deeper integration with others, while showing greater passion, greater inclusiveness, self-confidence, and self-reliance. Last year, I had the pleasure of receiving a few student delegations from renowned universities in China. During my conversations with them, I found that the Chinese young people are eager to learn more about Europe and have a strong favor for European culture. In their eyes, Europeans are characterized by openness, innovation, honesty, and integrity. A survey carried out by TikTok on Chinese young internet users shows that their top 2 interests in Europe are its social culture and economy. I believe progress in the internationalization of Chinese education and China-EU cultural exchanges have equipped youth of China in the new era with a global vision. And with international experiences. Many of the Chinese youth hold high expectations for the future of China-EU relations. Such positive attitudes deserve to be valued. It is my hope that frequent interactions between young people in both China and Europe will be strengthened through multiple channels. They will pave the way to a stable China-EU relationship based on mutual understanding, consensus, and common aspirations, thus bringing more stability and positive energy to our world. In this connection, and before concluding, please allow me to make a small advertisement for the EU Window Chinese Government Scholarship. It is a full scholarship established by China's Ministry of Education for candidates from EU member countries under the framework of China-EU high-level people-to-people dialogue. The purpose of this program is to expand student exchanges between China and the European Union. The scholarship covers both major studies and the Chinese language training. If you are interested in studying China and experiencing the Chinese culture, please visit the website of the Chinese Mission to the European Union, or contact my colleagues from the education section. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Ambassador Fu, thanks a lot for your inspiring speech. The next part of this session is a panel discussion, and so we will take 1 minute to change the setup of the room a little bit. We'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, so thank you again, Ambassador, for this inspiring speech. Now that we are all seated, I'm the chairman of KU Leuven's advisory committee for the Chinese region. Our advisory committee is one of the regional committees of KU Leuven, which means also that KU Leuven has put forward China as one of the key focus areas of its international policy. And so we are very glad to be able to host this ambassador's lecture and exchange ideas on collaboration and interaction between China and the EU. The next part of this session is a panel discussion in which we will first ask the panel members to explain their views on a number of topics, and then afterwards we will also have an open Q&A from the audience. Let me first briefly present our panel members. Besides Ambassador Fu, we have also our Vice Rector for International Policy and Interculturality, Professor Peter Lievens, who took the word already at the start of the session. We have Professor Doreen Emmers from the KU Leuven Chinese Studies Group, as well as the Department of Economics, and also Professor Xing Yang from KU Leuven's Department of Chemical Engineering. Thank you all for your presence. In order to kick off the discussion, I would like to give the floor first to our Vice Rector Lievens to give us a brief overview of KU Leuven's institutional policy towards collaboration with China, and perhaps also to reflect already on a number of the topics that were raised by the ambassador. So, please.
Thank you, Professor Leus. Let me first start by thanking you, Mr. Ambassador, for this very inspiring and very optimistic view on the collaboration between China and Europe, and also the openness to stimulate all the interactions between academia from the two parts of the world. I think what resonated a lot in your speech was the emphasis that you put on the importance of the relationship that young academics, students, researchers are building from both sides to collaborate. And this is, I think, something where we, all of us together, have to think about and to work on and to see how this goes. Let me follow up by just citing a couple of aspects of the relationship that we as university have had with China. And I will also, my job requires, I think, to do so, cite a couple of numbers. Currently, we have no less than 95 educational agreements between our university and various universities in China. These are agreements of various kinds. Some are faculty-level exchange agreements. A couple of them are also university-wide agreements where we are committed to collaborate and to exchange students. And this includes 9 universities for now. I'm just going to mention them. I will not mention all Chinese universities with whom we collaborate because that would take us too long. But this is Longyang University, Peking University, Shanghai Jiaotong University, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Tsinghua University, Zhejiang University, and National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan. Another number that is quite important is that in the last 5 years, and this includes the era of the pandemic, 430 KU Leuven students went for an exchange visit to China. It used to be larger numbers, but we know what happened in 2020. But on the other hand, the number of international students, as I mentioned before, and also Chinese students, kept on growing also during the pandemic. In the last 5 years, over 3,700 Chinese students studied at KU Leuven. Most of them studied in master programs, a significant number also in bachelor programs, and a large group also taking research training as a PhD students. And the remainder of the group consists of scholars that come for a short visit and are registered as a student, but quite often are joining research groups for a short visit and working with their partners here at our departments and faculties. And this also translates in all these interactions in research collaboration. We actually do not have a really large number of financed joint research projects, but if you look into the number of joint publications where there is an author of KU Leuven with at least one author of a Chinese university, then this is about 1,000 papers per year. And with that number, China ranks as number 9, including all nationalities, which is quite significant, knowing that lots of research, of course, is happening in collaboration with European partners. And this interaction between researchers, of course, is happening because of bottom-up initiatives of many of our professors and researchers who meet Chinese scholars at international meetings or just in literature and set up bilateral collaborations as they are used doing so with, of course, many colleagues across the world. Apart from that, we also have very strong links with China through the large number of graduates that we now have in China. So numbers are not completely exact, but about 4,500 Chinese nationals graduated at our university, and they, together with many Belgian and other nationalities living in China, are constituting a large group of people that organize themselves in 2 alumni chapters now. We have one in Shanghai already since many years, and a couple of years ago we went to Beijing to open there a second alumni chapter, so also that community is very well represented there. Now, maybe a couple of aspects about how we see collaborations with international partners, and actually this is not really China-specific. We have a policy of being very open to collaborating with partners from everywhere, but we do that in a policy where we really adhere to values that we stand for as a university. You mentioned a few of them in your speech, Mr. Ambassador. We certainly value aspects like academic freedom, freedom of speech, human rights, and other aspects, which is strongly rooted in the mission that we have developed over the years as a university, with 6 years of, or almost 6 years of history. So we built these international partnerships on mutual exchange and understanding of vision, mission, and strategy, and this requires openness on intentions and reasons for entering into this partnership, and that both in the short term and in the long term. So